Works Board of Trustees. It's August 22nd. We do have Graham Gillette joining us by phone. Say hi, Graham.
Hi, Graham.
Oh. Graham, if at any time you can't hear us, just please let us know. Or call me on,
thank you.
Or call me on my cell. I left it in the car. All right, with that, we will begin with the consent agenda. And Bill, I think you had one item you wanted to pull.
I did. If you would pull the consent agenda item 1C, list of payments. I have one item there. If you'd approve the rest, we can come back to it.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve everything on the consent agenda with the exception of 1C?
So moved.
Second.
A second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Bill, item 1C.
While I'm confident that each of you would have carefully looked at the 12-page registry of checks that were paid, I did want to point out there's through your actions, you'll be approving a check paid to me for $91.53. There was a particular book on workplace and life safety that I got several copies for members of the Des Moines Waterworks staff. So this is reimbursement for that, and again, if there's a direct payment to me, I try to make sure that you are aware of that before you approve the payments for a particular month, in this case for July of 17.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Do I have a motion to approve item 1C?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, this is the period of time that we allow public comment. So if we have anyone in the audience that would like to speak to us on behalf of anything either on the agenda or anything else, this is the time that we would love to hear from you. So we have a lot of new faces in the audience. I'm assuming there will be agenda items that you might be interested in speaking on, so you are welcome to do that at a later time then. Moving on, we have item 3A. Bill, do you want to tell us about it?
You have a relatively short agenda for action items. This item 3A involves the lease of one of our facilities in the Hallett property area that is in the chain of lakes area, I think is Ted's nicely coined term. This is for canoe storage for Argo Adventures. They're a group that often uses the Raccoon River for recreation and does it commercially also. That is, rents, I believe, not only the canoes, but also provides touring services going down the Raccoon. They're a group that is, from time to time, also, I believe, stored on our property here, but we're moving it to a more formal arrangement where they will actually be doing it in one of our buildings in the Hallett Properties area. This is leased between now and the end of next year, that is December 31st of 2018, and it's for only the months in which they would use it. We think it'll be about 9 months at $200. Not a big ticket item, but one that's really intended to provide them a safe place to continue to store necessary facilities for their business and on our facility that's otherwise underused. So staff recommendations for approval of a lease with Argo Adventures lease.
So I'm looking for a motion to recommend the board approve, to recommend the monthly rent payment of $200 to be collected during the canoeing season, or approximately 9 months, beginning with the term of this agreement and totaling $1,800. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Next we have item 3B. Bill?
This is really follow-up to a main break we had now about a month ago, as I recall, several weeks ago in East Des Moines between East 18th and Maury and East 21st and Maury. A large break, unfortunately, underneath railroad right-of-way. Railroads are particular about what happens beneath their facilities, and in this case, we're needing to go out, essentially going through a process of soliciting bids Our estimate is for $156,000, and this is largely for the steel casing that would carry our pipe. So an expensive project in a relatively small area. We have fashioned this in the form of a WSI, a Water Systems Improvement number 3 contract, because we're essentially going to take money necessary to finish this repair through the casing requirement and take money from Water Systems Improvement Contract 2, which you've already approved. There's some streets there that have not yet been completed. We'll be chasing money from one project to another, if you will. But the action before you here is to allow us to move forward for solicitation of bids associated with that and setting a public hearing for next month.
So I'm looking for a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for the 2017 Des Moines Water System Improvement Contract 3 and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the September 2017 board meeting. Do we have a motion?
And direct staff to publish notices.
And direct staff to publish notice. Thank you.
So moved. Second.
Any other questions, discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we move on to our public hearing.
We do.
Thank you. The agenda item is the 2017 Fluor Drive Water Treatment Plant. Help me with this, Bill. Ferric chloride?
Ferric chloride storage improvement.
And I'm going to open the public hearing, see if there are any comments from the public. Have we received any written comments from the public regarding this action item?
Other than the bids themselves, we've received no written comments from the public.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And I see that there is a note in here from Danny in regards to, are there any other
You'll see
facilities that
You'll see our
could use?
finding under 28E18 from Dan Cloffer that's certifying that there are no central Iowa facilities that essentially can substitute for the one that we're asking you to approve here in the public hearing.
So I'm seeking a motion to approve the project's form of contract, plans, and specifications and estimated cost. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We'll show none opposed. And then, Bill, if you could provide an analysis of the bids and
I'll be
make a
brief.
recommendation.
You recall that the estimate for this was $524,000. We received 3 responses back. The responses, unfortunately, were more than the estimate. The low responsive bid, in our view, is $593,000 from Brocon Services. Brocon has done other work for us. 2 additional respondents that were significantly more than both the estimate and Brocon's. So we're asking your approval to move forward by approving the Brocon Services LLC bid at $593,000.
Looking for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Moving right along, 3D. As Mark says, Berwick, but we call it Berwick Water Association.
It's a Scottish thing.
If I may,
Thank you.
jump right in. I think Amy has been very much involved in this process. This is the sale of purchase capacity from Berwick to, in this case, Polk City. Interestingly enough, this was a tripling of the investment of Berwick between 1996 and 2017. They came out very well in this, not only by the sale, but having the advantage before they became a total service customer of the purchase capacity, favorable pricing. So, as you know, Berwick is now a total service customer of ours. There's really no advantage for them except to speculate and hold purchase capacity for a potential of selling it at a higher price. They did very well by, again, tripling their investment, but under the master service agreement that we have with all of our wholesale providers. It takes more than willing two parties, a buyer and a seller. It takes your approval to finalize this sale of 250,000 gallons of purchase capacity between Berwick and the city of Polk City. And that's the staff recommendation, and thanks to Amy for her work in doing this, and Rick obviously also in watching to make sure that the agreement itself is fully fulfilled.
So we're looking for a motion for the board to approve the consent to the Berwick Water Association sale and assignment of 250,000 gallons per day of purchase capacity to Polk City, and authorize the chairperson, CEO, and general manager to execute the agreement for assignment and sale of purchase capacity and the appropriate supplemental adoption appendices.
Second.
Any discussion?
When they were doing our facilities that were built with this purchase capacity money,
Would have been the Matford facility, David, in 86.
has the value of that tripled?
Certainly the value has not tripled of the facility itself. And from a financial standpoint, there would have been depreciation on the facility as opposed to
But
value
if you
added.
did a value of it without depreciation, it's interesting. It must be
Even the
worth,
replacement value, David, would not have tripled.
it must be worth quite a bit.
It's always
It's
interesting to see
interesting.
the market for purchase capacity. Clearly, folks want the ability to get our water at a discount, and that's what's going on here. Polk City is one of those communities like Ankeny and like Bondurant that will go beyond their purchase capacity, and therefore they, under the terms of our agreement, will have an incremental price increase because of it. They're obviously trying very hard to reduce that increment by this purchase.
It'd be interesting to do a return on investment of that money.
I think it's pretty clear that from a Berwick standpoint, you don't have to do a lot of
Well,
analysis.
not on that, but just on somebody that's held it, what their investment has been.
Yeah, ultimately, it becomes what the market will bear. The last sale before this was what, Amy, 242? 252? 258. So, and that was last fall, as I recall.
2014.
Wow, time is flying.
It does fly.
Was it that long ago? That was the Xenia purchase
That's correct.
from Bondurant.
Polk County Rural Water District number 1.
Another total service customer. I don't know what analysis you could come up with, David, that would say that tripling an investment in 20 years is not a good one.
There must be a benefit in the price they're paying for the water.
That would certainly be the case, and it's certainly, hopefully in your materials, there were a number of other bidders besides Polk City. Polk City was obviously the one who was willing to bid it up the highest amount, but as I recall, there were two other bidders besides Polk City.
There were 3 other bidders.
Ankeny.
Ankeny, Bondurant, and Xenia.
They're not paying money for no value.
I'm confident that their financial analysis shows that those dollars are well spent.
Okay, I have one minor word correction. That's adoption annexes. I'm operating with one contact, so as I squint. Yep, that's what it is. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to our board committee reports. Planning Committee.
Okay, the Planning Committee had 2 items. Des Moines Water Works, the Ankeny Polk City report. Maybe, Bill, you could better explain that clearly.
Maybe I need to get to the minutes so I remember more clearly, David. Thank you. Thanks, Sue.
I remember the water moving back and forth and everything.
The long and short of the item that David and I are struggling for is staff work with HDR, the cities of Ankeny and the city of Polk City, involving concerns of longer-term use in the northwest portion of our service territory. HDR provided a master plan there. At the end of the day, a joint project currently between Des Moines Waterworks, the city of Polk City, and Ankeny is not in the offing because the economics don't work. But that's been an area, and there are folks here who've had some distribution experience in the audience, where we have a number of pressure zones and a number of complexities in our system. We'll continue to work that through, but the time is not now for the three entities, that's Polk City, Ankeny, and Des Moines Waterworks, to work on a joint storage facility, as an example. The timing just does not work. So we talked about that, and then if I may, David, just go on to the next item, unless you remember that well.
No.
The energy management discussion. Doug Oscarson gave a presentation on certification process. We're involved with the U.S. Department of Energy on better using energy at Des Moines Waterworks, focusing particularly now at Fluor, but by energy, I'm talking about something in addition to electricity, also talking about the use of natural gas and fuels for our vehicle fleet. It's a pretty sophisticated project that has had, to date, a positive rate of return. But obviously, we think it's our responsibility to continue to make that a more sophisticated analysis, which involves not just Fluor, but also MAFID, as well as the Saylorville water treatment.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Moving on to Finance and Audit Committee. Graham, would you like to report on this?
Sure, I think we could talk about this a little bit. Maybe I'll let Bill talk. We talked about the customer information system, and I don't know if Bill or Amy, you want to just give a brief overview of where we are on that. It was a rather in-depth discussion of where we were.
It was an in-depth discussion, and I'll report out here in a few minutes on our progress on a number of goals, 6 goals, one of which involves customer information. But the long and short of the discussion that Amy really led, and a presentation that Amy led, was over the next 18 months or so, we'll continue to be very engaged with assistance from our consultants, working closely with our customer service and our IT staff to tailor a replacement to our legacy customer relationship management CRM system, a customer information system that we think is very well tailored to the water business, unlike our legacy design specific for Des Moines Waterworks CRM system. So you as a board have committed this year, and hopefully will commit next year, to what, as added together, is about a $4 million investment. Amy, anything you want to add to that?
It was a great presentation, Amy. Thank you. Long overdue, and we do have projected, the costs are spread out over 2 years. So just as a reminder, we'll be seeing about another $2.2 million for 2018 for the system. Okay, moving along, we show regionalization review. Our newly named committee is, I believe, customer service. Graham, would you like to kick this off?
Yeah, and then I'll throw it back to you, Sue, but there have been a number of meetings that Sue's represented the board on, and Bill has represented Des Moines Waterworks with various entities, other board chairmen for water utilities, the mayors. They've had the city managers of some of the surrounding cities in for a discussion. The long and short of that, I think we're moving toward a point where there will be public meetings started on September 13th. Is that correct, Sue?
That's correct.
And then those meetings will be kind of regular, with the idea of discussing how we cooperate together, we being Des Moines Waterworks and the communities that we serve going forward. And I'll throw this back to Sue, but I think the interesting discussion that we had at the committee meeting was thinking about how we think about it. Thinking about how we as an entity, Des Moines Waterworks Board, get our arms around where we see this heading, these discussions with the suburbs heading in the future. And the long and short of it, I think at our September, and correct me too if I'm wrong on any of this, but that at our September meeting, and when I say our September meeting, the Des Moines Waterworks Board September meeting,
right,
we'll have a more in-depth discussion about kind of what's happened in both the public and kind of one-on-one meetings that have been held, but also have a discussion about kind of the direction we see as a board moving forward when it comes to discussions. And those discussions can include, short-term items like, how we form certain agreements, but the real goal is to think about the long-term agreements we have, with the overarching goal being how we manage in this region water as a resource. And, that's going to be long-term thoughts like, should there be a fourth water production facility needed? How do we envision all of the communities involved building that, financing that, and all those things? Not that we have those answers or should have those answers today, but at least begin to build a framework so that we can, as a region, make those decisions. And so, just to recap, I think at our September board meeting, the Des Moines Waterworks board meeting, we'll have a discussion, and I think Ken will present some ideas about how a regional governance committee could be put together. Not that there's any answers there, but kind of give us some sort of idea of the questions we have to ask ourselves and ask our neighbors about how to do this. And then I think as part of that, we should have a discussion as a board, that same type of things, kind of philosophical ideas, if you will, about where we're headed. Is that a fair assessment, Sue?
Well, it is, but I'll point to, Graham had made a couple of comments that really seem to be a nice approach as we think about it being existing board members of the Des Moines Waterworks Board of Trustees. And so I did ask him if he would work with Craig as we start to have some talking points for all of us, and as we're going out into the community, talking about the regionalization. So Graham has agreed to present that as well to this board, so that I thought it was just a nice way to look at this overall region and why this is good for Des Moines Waterworks and good for the region as well. So, and not to steal your thunder, I'm not going to take any of the comments you made, but I think it really helped solidify what it is that we're doing as a board versus the intent we have with the regionalization. I did just hand out, Graham, the most updated, and this was as of 8/9, guiding principles of regionalization of water production. These are the agreed to principles that the 3 existing boards have, and now that the 6 mayors of our largest customers have agreed to in concept. There may still be some tweaks, but this allows all of us to come to the table and talk about this new entity and what it is that we would like to accomplish through the creation of this governance board. Great momentum. Karen Novak and I just had a meeting today at the Community Foundation, and I think we have a lot of the regional players very interested in what we're doing as we look at our long-term needs. So, Ted, you're going to be making your presentation more than once because I offered that up to our group today, too. I thought it was excellent. Thank you.
If I could say, just,
Sure.
As we go forward with this, and Des Moines Waterworks has been working on regional agreements or even regional governance for some long time. We just considered the Berwick situation, which involved a 28E agreement from 1996, which is 21 years ago. And we've been making agreements with other communities for a long time to the benefit of those communities, the benefit of Des Moines Waterworks. It's been presented by some people that, as if we're an ogre that's beating up on our neighbors. And point of fact, in this situation, I think it's true in all the situations where we have these agreements, people have been able to purchase not only a much better price on the water that they get, but they also get expertise and knowledge that they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford individually. Berwick would never be able to hire somebody with the knowledge that all the 200-plus members of Des Moines Waterworks employees would be able to provide piece by piece. And, so it's been a big benefit for everyone. And they're also represented by their local governments making those agreements. And those local governments are not bound. They don't have to make that agreement, but it's in their best interest, and that's what they do for their communities. So there has been representation, and there has been good business. Frankly, when people ask us to run our governments like a business, this is what they're asking for. We've been doing a good job of it. What we want to do, and in the principles going forward is to do an even better job of it. It's been evolving over time. Things have changed. Federal support, state support for infrastructure and other things are even more scarce, and we need to make local agreements and have something. So we're very interested in that.
Can I have?
You know, Mark, I think you're absolutely right there in the approach. I mean, what we've been doing at Des Moines Water Works for a long time is providing water for this region. And what I see as our opportunity here at this moment is to look forward to the future and build a structure that's even stronger than what we have. And it's going to look a lot like what we do today. These are 28Es. These are agreements that, you know, as best we can, look at the future decisions that have to be made and determine, you know, those structures of how decisions are going to be made. The truth of the matter is what we're not discussing at this point in any way is any transfer of assets or purchase of assets by some other entity. Des Moines Water Works owns this regional production facility, and what we're looking at is how do we continue to do that? And in my view, the most important part is how do we manage water as an asset in this region? The most dangerous thing that can happen to every consumer in our region is that, you know, there's this arms race, if you will, when it comes to water. And a whole bunch of communities start building their own water production facilities. Well, we're going to start, you know, draining the resource. And the good news is that everybody that has been around the table thus far gets that and understands that we're all better off if we do this together and we make, you know, certain decisions together. And so, you know, I think we finally, after kind of a year of silly politics, we've gotten to a point where we're talking about, you know, the real world. And I like the way you phrased it, Mark. You know, these are business decisions, and what, you know, those business decisions are what's most important for our customers. And one of the things we'll discuss in September that I think is important is we often get not distracted, but because we produce water, we get focused on consumption. And if you build a model that's based just on consumption, so if you have a regional entity where there are board members and they're appointed purely by, you know, areas and the consumption of water they have, you have to be careful about that, because in my view, one of the most important things we do is we look out for our individual consumers. We look out for our residents. We want to make sure that every resident can turn on his or her tap at her house and have clean, affordable, safe water. We don't want to necessarily just serve our bigger customers. And so we have to, in my view, as board members, keep really focused on what our job is. And what I'm happy is about right now, I think we have a great opportunity as we look at these new agreements in doing exactly what you said, Mark. So I appreciate that.
Bill?
If I may take 30 seconds, because we have some employees here, and I think this discussion becomes, particularly if you haven't been following it blow by blow over the last year, becomes a little bit confusing. The one thing that I want our employees to understand is all this discussion about a regional governance doesn't do away with Des Moines Water Works. Des Moines Water Works and this board, as well as Urbandale and West Des Moines, would continue to exist in the future. This is a separate group that may include some of the folks that you see here up at this table involved in making future decisions about a fourth plant and about the future of water production, but each of the water boards would continue to exist in the future, and you would be represented by the same folks that are up here. And one of the details of this is that Des Moines Water Works would be the operating contractor for whatever the term of the agreement is for whatever the facilities are, including the three that we will continue to own in the future, and that's Fluor, Maffitt, and Saylorville.
And so if you use what Bill just said there, and you can tweak those words a little bit, the same speech can be given to the people of Des Moines. You know, nothing's going to change for them. You know, for 100 years, the people of Des Moines have invested heavily in this asset of Des Moines Water Works. they're going to be protected going forward. This is just a way of, looking to the future and how do we supply water. I mean, the truth be told, if we have to build a fourth plant to produce water in this area, the need for that water is going to really be outside of Des Moines. It's going to be in the suburbs for that new production facility. And so we have to think, how do we build that? How do we pay for it? And, which entities and which groups of people participate in that. And so, as we talked about in the committee meeting, that in many ways, politically, the last year was painful to have other entities, the Farm Bureau, the legislature, and others talking about kind of a breakup of Des Moines Water Works. We're now at a point where we have an opportunity. We're not talking about the breakup of Des Moines Water Works. We're talking about how do we come together with cities and existing water utilities throughout the area to plan better. And so finally, I think we're talking about something very reasonable. And everyone, whether they're an employee of Des Moines Water Works or a citizen of Des Moines or a ratepayer of Des Moines Water Works, there's an opportunity here. We just have to make the most of it.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, the next thing, Botanical Garden. Peggy, do you have any kind of an update as our representative?
I've heard nothing, and I take no news as good.
That is good. And Mark, the Waterworks Park Foundation Board?
I think we could probably skip that for today. We've got a presentation from well-qualified representatives later.
And Jen Terry, would you like to come up to the podium? I think you have an announcement.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
I guess, shall I go over the legislative priorities first?
Sure.
Okay. So I just want to highlight, we're passing around some flyers. I didn't know I would need that many, but hopefully you'll take a look at the copy. There's one for each of you. But we've identified our 2018 legislative priorities in cooperation with our lobby team. So they're not a lot different, but a little bit more nuanced maybe than they were last year. So we have been already presenting these to legislators this summer, and they've been very well received thus far, along with updates on the governance regionalization process. All the legislators are happy to see that's moving forward. So our first of 4 legislative priorities is to make the Raccoon River watershed a top priority. This is one of the most impaired watersheds in the state and in the Midwest for both bacteria as well as nitrates. So we think there's a lot of good arguments, regardless of where your district is located, for putting in the code that this is a watershed that should have priority funding and planning as they move forward with water quality. We want to stop the pollution where it starts. We support a watershed approach rather than the oft-mentioned random acts of conservation spending of money that's gone on the last 5 years. We want to stop all kinds of pollution, whether that's nutrients, bacteria, whatever it is at the source, and that includes the watershed approach plans and stopping it up north. So we also support watershed management authorities, specifically the North Raccoon, the Beaver Creek, and the Walnut Creek WMAs. Our second legislative priority is to create adequate and sustained funding for cleaning up the water. And as we all know from the news, budget's going to be an issue this year. So that's a little bit in the hands of the legislators to decide where and how much of money's coming for that. But we push very strongly for taxpayer accountability for whatever funds are spent in these projects. We think water quality monitoring needs to be done in state-funded projects, and we need to have public access to that data. The third legislative priority is to give explicit and specified authority and responsibility to drainage districts. Our opinion in the lawsuit made it very clear that it's up to our state legislature to stop this pollution where it starts. So we are giving them the opportunity to give specific responsibility to these drainage districts to consider environmental impacts, perhaps to consider public health, habitat, and to do water quality monitoring of water that flows into public waterways that ends up on our doorstep. And the fourth legislative priority is local control of drinking water. So after last session, we just wanted to be sure that we're very clear that drinking water regulations and planning, long-range planning and regionalization efforts are best left in the hands of water experts. And so we are pushing for local control of drinking water, governance and regionalization issues as we move forward. And then there's a handy chart that's very useful with legislators and others on the back. So when you sit down with someone and they tend to think that water quality is getting better in the state, it's easy to show them data points where that's not the case in our watershed. It might be in other spots, but it's not here in Iowa. So that's what we've been talking to legislators about this summer. We're going to continue meeting with them and asking them to come here for tours and visits from now till the beginning of session and beyond. So that's our legislative priorities.
Thank you very much. I think you had another announcement you wanted to make to us?
Yes, so it is with a heavy heart, but mixed feelings that I have submitted my resignation to Waterworks, so I will be moving on in about 3 weeks. So I'm going to continue working on clean water and clean energy issues, and I'm very thankful to all of you for the support. You've really been great for almost the 2 years I've been here. It'll be just about exactly 2 years on my last day, so I can't say enough good things about the important work that everybody does here. So thank you, and I'm sure we're all going to continue working together in my new role. So thank you.
And do you want to tell us about your new role?
Not yet, thank you.
Okay.
You'll find out soon.
Thank you for the work you've done.
Thanks, Jen.
You know, I do want to say something about Jen because I had the opportunity to see her at work at the Capitol, and I cannot, first of all, compliments to Bill for realizing we needed this position and bringing the position in when we did. Little did we know we would need her as badly as we did. But she approached the position with grace and tenacity and always had a comeback. She listened exceptionally well, and I don't think, I question whether or not we would still be an entity had Jen not been at the Capitol doing what she was doing. And you know, it was Jen and Laura that made the decision to bring Craig and his team on board. And I still remember being there one morning before 8, and there were emails going around like at 6, do you think we could have this? And I walked in before 8, and they were printed and on the lobbyist table. So thank you to all of you. It does take a team, and Jen certainly did lead that team well. So thank you, Jen. We wish you the best.
If I may move on to the goals, Sue?
Yes.
As part of my update, this is in 4B of your materials. We have 6 goals. We've had 6 goals for 2017. I'm not going to go through all 6 of them in elaborate detail, but to remind you, we had 3 essentially in our IT, finance, customer service world, and 3 in our operating world. The 3 in our front office world, customer information system, we talked a little bit about that in the F&A report, so I'm not going to mention that other than we continue to march forward with the replacement of our CRM system with a better customer interactive software. It'll take us another 18 months to do that and $4 million. The second goal, so we are on task for that goal. The second goal, PCI, payment card industry compliance, is largely a security-related process involving our use of customer credit cards as part of our business. We continue to be on task for that. Cost of service review, all of you are aware of the importance of cost of service, a process that our finance department has headed up for a number of years in setting rates. We have asked a third party to come in and provide us some guidance on improving that and or replacing that. That remains on task, a critical issue in our discussion with rates and our wholesale customers also, so we remain on task with that. The 3 in operations in particular involve safety, our long-range plan and 5-year CIP, and then finally performance from our Saylorville water treatment plant. On the safety front, we're doing well, but not perfectly, with our OSHA recordables as the material. The agenda that you receive monthly will indicate tracking how we are year to date. We've had 2 year-to-date OSHA recordables. That's well below our goal. 2 is too many, but our safety committee, our employees continue to be very engaged in this, and I'm certainly pleased, as we all should be pleased, by the progress we've made. We'll continue to take this as a serious goal for all of the benefits of each and every one of our employees. Also, as a goal involving primarily our operating folks a long-range plan, which between now and 2040 tells us, back to our regional discussion, how much water we need, where, and what facilities we need to build to be able to make that happen. A lot of coordination with CERDWIC, the Technical Advisory Committee, with outside consultants. We continue to march forward with that on schedule. Very important in the regional discussions that we're involved in with our suburbs about what will happen, where, at what cost. That progresses very well. Saylorville continues to be an area of concern and focus for us. We have reached 9.8 million gallons of production there for a very short period of time this year. As you know, we want to more consistently reach 10 MGD at that facility. Mike and his staff and our engineering staff continue to dig in on that. Saylorville is a very important asset for us moving forward. We need to continue to move in a direction that optimizes that in a better way for our customers, particularly in the northern reaches of our service territory. You'll remember last meeting, I believe, you approved a well rehab projects, actually 2 wells involved in that at Saylorville, that we hope will get us closer to our objective of consistently getting over 7.5 MGD in cold water moving forward. So a brief report of the 6 goals. Again, 5 of the 6 were very much on task for the Saylorville treatment plant concern remains for us. We'll continue to work hard on that. Only one other issue that I would add. This Thursday at 11 o'clock, Laura will correct me if I'm wrong, we have a ribbon cutting for the handoff, essentially, of our maintenance responsibilities at the Purple Martin facility in one of our chain of lakes, where we are effectively handing over the day-to-day operation and maintenance of that to the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. There'll be a ribbon cutting and a little bit of speechifying, hopefully not too much, for that, but we're pleased to partner with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources in their continued interest in that from a conservation standpoint, and our continued interest in owning that property for future source water use. All I have to say.
Thank you. We do have 2 after-board meeting presentations, one by Ted Corrigan and Hannah Inman from the Parks Foundation. And Hannah, we've heard so much about you from the board, so we're looking forward to hearing that. But before we do...
One item I'd like to draw the board's attention
Thank you.
to 2 competitive quotation contract status items for inclusion in the minutes. The first being the 2017 Fluor Plant Pumping Station North Entrance Reconstruction Project, to report as shown in the board materials substantial completion, with retainage to be released by August 31, 2017.
Rick, for the board's benefit, where can they find this?
That is under item
and for my benefit.
4D, 4C, and 4D.
Thanks. I'm sorry. Please, go on.
And the second item reflects a competitive quotation contract expected to be awarded in September of this year, entitled 2016 Hazen Elevated Storage Tank Overflow Air Gap Retrofit. Those don't require board action, but simply notation in the minutes.
Okay. Thank you. I'll look for a motion for us to adjourn before we have our presentations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Graham, you're welcome to stay on if you want to listen, or this
I'll
is
stay
being
on for a
recorded.
while.
Sound good?
Can I cue it up for just a second,
Sure.
Sue? And
Sounds
Ted will be the first up. You'll recall at our last meeting, that is in the July meeting, David made mention of his pride in what's going on Fluor Drive and in the park. And Ted certainly took that as an opportunity to gather our employees and grounds in particular and talk about all the good things that's happening.
Oh, no.
All yours, Ted.
Honestly, it should only take about 5 minutes. But last month, Dave did correctly, I think, notice that the park is in great shape, Fluor Drive is in great shape, and asked me to, at this month, comment a little bit on what we're doing to affect that change or that condition in the park. And as I looked into it a little bit, I realized, honestly, it's all about the staff. And I invited them here today. Most of them, actually 6 of the 8 made it, which is fantastic. I invited them here today to see the park plan presentation because they're very interested, but also so that we could recognize them a little bit as we talk about some of the few things that they are doing, just a few of the many things they are doing. And so just quickly, Jessica Barnett is here. Many of you have seen Jessica before. She's presented to some committees and things. She's the supervisor. Carrie Alvarado is our lead gardener. Carrie is often responsible, and I think this year is an example for the designs of the annual beds on Fleur Drive, and so many people admire her work. Fritz Gukin is a laborer in grounds, longtime employee, spent some time in pipelines. Jeff Marker and Donnie Miller are both heavy equipment operators in the grounds department. And then Carrie Wolf over there between Peggy and Pat is a gardener, also a certified arborist, which is very valuable to us here with all the trees that we have in Waterworks Park. A couple of things about the staff. There are two other folks who are not here. Adam and Dustin are not here, but the entire staff is 8 people, okay? And not only do they take care of all of Waterworks Park and do all that Fleur Drive median work, they also take care of the park out at Maffett Reservoir, all the wells and all that treatment plant area, and they have interaction with a number of our remote facilities too. So they are small but mighty. They get a little help in the summertime from some college kids and some temps, but this is a tiny group of people, 8 people, and Jessica's the supervisor who does no work really at all ever.
It's a little overemphasized, Jessica. You do some work.
But, the key is there are 7 people who do this work, and we are talking about thousands of acres, literally 3,000 acres of property that we own and that they manage. The other thing that I want to point out is with the exception of Donnie, who is a sage and has been in his position for a long time, none of these other people were in the position they have today 3 years ago. So this is a very new group that has gelled very quickly, and they do great work. I want to point out just 3 things that I think have really contributed to what Dave noticed in the park in terms of the appearance. The first relates to turf maintenance. We mow a lot of grass. We have a lot of turf to take care of. And not just to make park areas accessible to the public, but also because we have to maintain access to all the infrastructure that really crisscrosses Waterworks Park and some of our other facilities. So we do a lot of mowing. So much so that a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, we actually decided that we would hire a contractor to do some of our mowing in the park, some of the larger open areas. They did that for a year or two, and then actually the staff came to me and they said, we could do this. With a little bit of thoughtful planning and kind of selective mowing in terms of how often we mow things and mowing with the appropriate equipment and scheduling, we could do this ourselves without any additional help. And they are now, for the second year, doing all that mowing in-house again, no additional staff, completely eliminated that cost, and doing a great job. They are also pretty aggressively managing access to the areas of the park that are susceptible to flooding and even just heavy rainfall events make them kind of marshy. Apparently, wet turf is a really attractive nuisance for some people in four-wheel drive vehicles because they get off-road and really tear the heck out of things and have really made a mess of the park in recent years. They've done a lot of planning and coordinating in terms of just when they open and when they close areas. They've done some fencing. They've done a lot of great things in terms of turf maintenance, which really helps with the appearance of the park.
I've seen the tape.
Yeah. And it has helped. It has honestly helped. So that's kind of a turf maintenance perspective. Tree maintenance is another thing that has really been ramped up in the last couple of years. In 2015, we did a tree inventory. We had, who was it? Davey Tree Service came in and they literally looked at every single tree in the mowed area of Waterworks Park. They identified it, classified it, gave it a condition, pinpointed it on GIS, so it's now in our GIS system as an asset, every single tree. But they identified issues with those trees, they identified dead trees, hazardous trees, and the staff has very much used that as a guide. We've budgeted some money. They have taken out the dead trees, the dying trees, they've removed stumps. They have also, through Jessica's coordination, hired contractors to come in and do some of the bigger work that we can't do. And they've pruned a lot of trees. limbs dangling out, trees that were dying off. They've just done a nice job. No longer do you see any snaggle-toothed trees in Waterworks Park, at least not in the mowed areas. They've done a lot of work, really improved the collection, if you will. It looks a lot better, and from my perspective, it looks a lot safer, too, without dead trees here and there throughout the park. They've also done a lot of nice work in the Arboretum, kind of opening some of those trees up, raising them up a little bit, which also helps a lot with mowing, because you can mow under them. It helps from a welcoming perspective. You can see into the park so much more. It's a different look and feel to the park, which I think is part of what Dave has recognized. And then Fleur Drive. A lot of emphasis has been placed on Fleur Drive for a long time. As I mentioned, Carrie often does the designs. These folks do the plantings. They've been very aggressive with weed control. They've implemented a process where they have someone come and set up the traffic control so they can stay busy in the park. It's a big job to set up all that miles of traffic control and take it down. They're having professionals do that. But they have implemented in the last couple of years this full island replacement. Many of those planters have been planted for more than 10 years. It's a very harsh environment with all the traffic and the road salt. The plants just die, and then they won't come back. The soil is spent. So they've been working with the city to provide new soil and new plants for 1 or 2 islands each year, and are doing complete replacement so that we can keep that looking good. So those are a few things. The last thing I would say is that we are really taking seriously the park plan and what is coming. We've kind of hit the pause button in terms of planting trees or making any significant changes as we wait to see the wonderful things that the foundation is going to do. And unless there are questions.
I have questions.
Sure.
I want to know from each of you what we can do as a board to help you do your job. What things you need. Obviously, we have the Parks Foundation here. They're selling your vision. I mean, they're selling to donors what the park can become. So, Jessica, you're the supervisor. I want to start with you.
We can always use more money. No, we've been fortunate enough to have money in the budget to do a lot of the tree work that Ted specified. Okay. A lot of the work is out of our scope. We don't have equipment to get high up in the trees to do a lot of the pruning, and it's been really nice to be able to do some of that and remove the large trees that have died out in the park, because we have seen significant loss over the years, and a lot of that I think is due to the flooding, and some are just old, but we have lost quite a few trees. So.
Good. Carrie?
Make the people stop honking up the work.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Major irritant?
Yeah. I'd say about 3 out of 10 people compliment us, and the rest of them are, blocking traffic. So.
Sometimes I honk just to wave. So I'll stop there. Okay, Fritz.
I don't really have a lot to add to that. I'd like to say, though, that Jess makes it easy to work for her. That, you talked about 3 years in jail. A lot of that comes from Jess and Carrie both as leaders, basically, in our department. We get, not only do we do those type of things, which are park things, but we do a lot of things that are outside of the scope of what normal people. We do a lot of concrete work. We do levee repair. There's a lot of things that go unnoticed, and not unnoticed, but maybe you just didn't know that we did those things. And through Jeff, with the knowledge that he brings, those things are easily done. We talk about money all the time. This guy figures out another way to get it done, and not spend a lot of money doing it or a lot of time. Carrie does a great job with leading the gardeners, and it's an easy department to work.
Very nice. Jeff?
I would say what you can do for us is just to make sure that we have money available for equipment, because we use that equipment to keep it up. It seems like the mowers are the thing that break down the most because they get used the most.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you need mowing done and 2 mowers are broken down, you kind of at a standstill.
I
Interesting.
think we just heard about this yesterday, didn't we, Ted? Scott Behrman is definitely champion.
$80,000 mower.
Yeah, expensive one.
Good. Donnie?
I would just echo what Jeff just said, and that was my thought exactly. It's just be mindful of our equipment and maybe even our entire facility as far as storage and protecting that equipment, those kinds of things, you know.
It is in the floodplain.
It is. It's a barn that's, although historic, is pretty ratty.
Best story.
Carrie?
First, I wouldn't say I want more trees.
More trees.
But of course, that goes into a larger budget for the type of things. But definitely mowers as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to Dave for asking the question, and thank you to all the staff for coming. They all get off at 3:30, so they had to make plans. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hannah and Randy.
If I could just say too, I've been on the board for 4 years, so I saw and I grew up out here. My grandfather was one of the Isaac Walton League folks that moved it from across the street to where it presently is, so I've been observing it since I was a kid. I know some people didn't like the fence going down, and we decided it was best to stay where we are with that. But just this last week, as I was driving along, I was looking at, I drive in different places to give a kind of critical eye and see what's going on, and it is so much better and more inviting, and the view into Waterworks, you can see the buildings and see what we're doing, and that it doesn't look, there's a little bit of a foreboding with the fence up and the trees down that, people could easily get in if they wanted to, but it didn't look attractive. It looks so much better, and I appreciate up and down the street, Fleur, it's a great gateway for the whole city. And working with the Park Foundation Board, I know the discussions that we have, and thinking of you, there are people thinking of you and appreciating the work that you're all doing all the time, so just know that. Thank you.
Good. Hannah?
Well, I'll start off by saying we did go in front of John Deere, and we did ask them for some in-kind donations of the equipment that you use. We haven't heard back yet, but I'll let you know. So my name is Hannah Inman, and I am chair of the Waterworks Park Foundation, and with me is Randy Reichart, and I'm sure you recognize him as he was past chair and is still a great contributing board member, actually someone I hope to mimic when my term is over, of staying involved and pushing some of these initiatives forward. And then also Sam Carroll, our executive director. So I just want to start out by...
on the side.
Yeah, right here?
On.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Did I get it? There we go. So it has been, let's see, we started this, I think, in January of 2014, starting to talk about it. And since then, I feel like we've come a long ways. We've had a ton of input, both before the master plan, during the process, and since then. We've talked to neighbors, we've talked to staff, we've talked to user groups, and we've coordinated with other civic organizations and governments. And then since the master plan, the feasibility study, we started to continue that through our technical team, our advisory groups and donors, and the board of directors. And of course, most importantly, and where I feel like I've learned the most, is with staff, whether it's flood resiliency, gut checking that we're doing the right thing for water quality conservation, and also that we're not making this an extreme burden on the staff and being cognizant of that. When we started this, we realized, we would be pulled in a lot of different directions as it came time, as I'm sure you all know. And when we looked at the park, we realized that the one thing that made it unique was that it was a working park. It was the utility that provided clean water to all of our taps. And there's a story there, and the more that we educate the group and the community about that, the better off we'll all be. And so in telling that story, we made sure that we had education, conservation, and recreation guiding us to tell that story. obviously conservation to keep that water clean, education to tell that story and make sure everyone understands how it gets to your tap that way. But also recreation, because when people are in it, near it, or on the water, they inherently start to understand and they start to see. They start to say, why is it foamy today? Why is there some algae in there? Or what is that blue color in there? And they start to ask those questions and they start to find out the answers. And all of a sudden, we have another ally as we go forth. Of course, when we started this, we made sure we integrated all those great things that already exist. The Capital Crossroads Plan, Healthy Polk 2020, some of the STEM plans, the Tomorrow Plan, the Water Trails and Greenways. We made sure that their priorities were part of ours. So the first and foremost is within the park, it's 1,500 acres. And the mass majority of that will stay wild. And we want to make sure that that is something that we're pushing through. And so with the wild, what we're going to do is basically do education and signage, both physical signs, but also virtually. And so you're going to start seeing some of those areas that explain what are some of the existing things within the park. What is the gallery? Why is it there? And what can you see and feel when you're in the park? What is that bird? What should I look for? Things like that.
Part of the reason why we got to that and why we're leaving it the way that is because people said they loved it. They absolutely love the wild. They love playing in the wild. They love exploring the wild. They love doing different things in the wild, whether that's mountain biking, trail running, or somewhere in between. And we wanted to listen to the community and make sure that we kept it as such.
And also provide a little bit of a framework as far as rules when you're in the wild. If you're near the bridle paths, what does that mean? Should you be going through blasting your radio when you're on a bike? What should you do when you see a horse? And that it is part of that nature and sort of having a reverence for that when you're using it. And how unique it is that within the middle of our urban city, we have this 1,500 acres. So when we move to what we call the Big Splash or the East Activity Node, this was kind of one of the representations that sort of inspired the plan. And it's really letting a river be a river. So when you look at this, here's the outline, and you can see where Fleur is on the right-hand side, and you can see the Grays Lake. So of the 1,500 acres, we're really focused on 90 acres, and this is what this represents. And of that 90 acres, Sam, correct me, is it 30 is the Great Lawn?
Well, no, 60 would be the lawn, but 30 is where we're doing this.
Okay, so really, we're doing a huge impact with such a small footprint, and that was really important to us. So here's what we're getting to for the East Node layout, and there's going to be some changes. Right now, we, after listening both to the staff of Waterworks and some other people, we have decided that we are going to reduce the landscaping within the plan. So all the pathways will be there, but instead of having some of the planted beds within it, currently what we're going to do is plant that to grass and then also have trees. And the reason why we're doing that is, one, we understand the maintenance burden that would put on the maintenance staff. Two, because we expect this to flood, we want to watch how that happens. So in the future, if we would add a bed or two or three, we would like to see how it's going to flood, how that's going to impact, and what's left behind when it recedes, and how can we best plant that to something that, one, minimizes maintenance, two, takes advantage of what we're looking to do in education and conservation, and also give an opportunity for community involvement, whether that's a partnership with the Master Gardeners, the Botanical Center, something like that, to bring them in to help with that.
All those conversations have already happened as well. So this is not something that we're looking to start as we have completed this. This is something that we are designing with them in mind. We are getting their conversations, their ideas, their suggestions to make sure that these are done appropriately, and we are working with them hand in hand with our local resources.
Another change you'll see when the master plan is complete is that we had always intended to do adventure play and nature play, but we're going to do an addition of a traditional play system. And here's the reason why. The reason why we had adventure play and nature play, that natural playscape that you may see at Brenton Arboretum or Jester Park or one of the other parks in town, is that it encourages kids to have self-guided adventure play, and it gets them out and exploring. But what we heard from our user groups, specifically parents of younger children, and the research backs this up, is a traditional play system allows children, it makes them want to stay right there, especially younger children. And so parents really wanted that option. So if they're there to, have some food at the food truck or watch a civic concert series with the symphony or something, they can keep their little ones close and an eye on them. And so we heard that, and that was definitely something that came over and over from a lot of different groups. So we made that addition, but still allowed for other bigger play for the older children. And here's some imagery of what that will look like. And you can see in the lower middle, that is more of a traditional play scape, but it's more designed to sort of blend into the natural playscape that we hope to see mimicked in the other areas. So we also had some changes with the amphitheater. With donor input and also with our conversations with Hoyt Sherman, the symphony, the opera, and numerous other civic music groups, we made the stage larger. And if you look to the left, you'll see that that allows now the symphony to come and hold concerts at the amphitheater. And that was something that through our user groups and through our feasibility study and the testing was very, very important. This is what the design of the amphitheater looks like. This is what it would look like from the Great Lawn without anything on there, without a performance. This is what it would look like with a performance. And then this is what it would look like from the celebration lawn. And as a nod to Gray's Lake and to complement that park that has been such a success, we continued the lighting that you see on the bridge onto the amphitheater. And so really those two parks start to complement each other, and as you're driving into Des Moines, it just bookends a great picture. So there is a change to the passageway, and although you probably can't see it, it's pretty significant. So the facade is going to stay the same, but what is going to change, so you're going to still have the 19-foot, 11-inch wide opening, the 9 floor-to-ceiling height. It'll approximately be about 85 feet long. The two things that you'll see differently is, one, we're not going to have that light well, sort of that skylight that was supposed to be in the middle of the floor, because once we, per code, put the grating on top of it, it really didn't allow for much light in, and it was really just a cost and maintenance issue. So we got rid of the center skylight. In addition, we changed the way that it was going to be built and instead went with a precast arch unit and express footings. What this does is, one, it decreases our cost. Two, it has the same structural integrity, if not a little bit more, and it shortens construction time. So all of those things are very good for our budget and for our friends that have to use floor drive. Also, because floor is going to be redone by the city in 2019, we agreed to push this construction back to coincide with their construction, so we only have to impact closing floor or shortening it one time. Per the request by the city, we did do 2 designs in case they wanted to add a sidewalk on floor instead of using the nice paths on either side. We have highly suggested not doing this because it's very close to a very busy intersection. We don't anticipate that they will do that, but they have that in case it ever comes up. So here, as you know, we're building on the highest part of the park, and you can see the left is, or the right is, a blown-up version, and those are the annual chances of flooding, and we're mainly staying in that 1% annual chance of flooding of the built structure. There we go. We did do hydraulic modeling and minimizing the impact and the water surface and velocity. So on the left was our initial plan, and then the right was made with modifications. So on the left, we saw that there was a 2/10 rise on the levee of a foot. And so what we did was we lowered the bathrooms to ground level, and then that had it minimized the impact on the levee to where there wasn't any. Now, if you look at the hydraulic modeling, this is the historic days flooded with the new, am I right on this, with the new plan. So if you look, that big blue on the right is Gray's Lake, and then you see Fleur going through, and then you see the river. And as you can see with the day, and I can't read that at all, Sam, the white is how many days flooded? Is that the 14?
The portions, basically in the white area where we're building, is somewhere between the 8 days and 14 total days flooded.
Since 1996. So that's not per year, that's since 1996.
So this is a study that we did within the last 6 months, which took quite some time, took quite some finances to get completed, but the end product was, from our perspective, extremely favorable. If you think about it from that date, what was it, 1996? Mm-hmm. Of, 21 years? That it only is closed or flooded 10 to 14 days. That's pretty remarkable.
Is there a reason why you didn't go back to 93?
You're going to have to ask your hydrologist.
They changed the data, Fritz. I don't know.
Good question.
One of the other things that we're going to see is the universal access boat launch. That is in process. I doubt that we will see it built until the spring, and we all know that's dependent upon the weather, but it is in the process of the finalization of the design, and then the permitting will take 90 days or so. But this is the first step of the water trail, and this is going to be a huge win for Des Moines. Just to have this access point and how it is universal is a really big thing that a lot of people are very excited about. And when I'm in meetings, whether I'm representing Waterworks or someone else, this is one of the things that they keep talking about. So we're very excited about this plan. So as you can see, this is sort of the final project, what it will look like. And you can see the amphitheater and the celebration lawn and the great lawn, as well as the arboretum and the place for the food trucks. We're really, really excited about being able to do this and to bring people and tell the story of what Waterworks utility does and how important it is. And we think that this is really going to bring more people to the park and really endure more people to what this utility does. So where are we right now? So we are over $8.25 million in campaign pledges, so we are almost to our goal. Most of our surveys are complete, and we're in the process of finalizing the schematics for approval permitting. And then we're in that process. Once we get to the final design, we're going to be able to more accurately predict costs and also get that maintenance and final operations agreements done. We're continuing to collaborate, most definitely with Des Moines Waterworks, but also with City Parks and Recs and other users. And we're looking for working with the city on issues surrounding connectivity, passageways, and creating room for that circuit that comes in phase 2. And Herd Visionaries was one of the great programs that was launched with this, and it's this pen. And if you knew Mr. Herd, he would always wear a lapel pin to spark conversation. And working with Trudy, and really Randy took the lead on this, some of our higher donors, major donors, get this pin. And it was really a great way to get some people to come up a little bit and maybe get people that wouldn't necessarily give to this to come alongside of us. So it's been a great talking point and definitely a unique thing in the city. So with that, you can see where we're at. We're in the final design and implementation, and we're hoping you'll see the designation of the wild and the signage going up and towards the end of this year. Next year, you'll start to see almost everything will be built in 2018, and then in 2019, you'll see the passageway. So with that, I would love to open it up to questions. There has to be some questions.
Not a question, a request. Can you get us a copy, get Laura a copy of the slides so we can get it to Graham? I'm sure it's a little bit of a challenge to visualize this on the other end of a telephone.
Yeah. The other thing
great. Thank you.
The other thing I just wanted to show you guys, if you look back behind here, this RDG print, the last one, that shows the layout of what we're doing, those 90 acres. And below it, it shows the layout from Cows, is that the one? Yeah, from Cows to the Civic Center to the World Food Prize, and they are the same landmass.
Huh.
So when you look at what we're doing, it's pretty significant, and it was a great thing that RDG brought up because it showed not only the scale of what we're doing, but then also that that's such a small part of the park. It really speaks to how massive the park is.
Hannah, a question for you. We were talking about this earlier this week in another meeting.
Yeah.
The original bike trail that would connect the city within a city, the proposed Hubble development, where is that in the overall plan? The bike trail that would go back behind and underneath?
To the north?
Yes.
North of the water.
And connect up with MLK?
It hasn't currently been put into the plan yet. We're looking for a donor for that trail itself. There's been a lot of conversation with the city about that, and they're very excited about that, but that is still something that we're looking to raise funds for.
Okay. That's what we were wondering, because we see that as a great connection to what you're doing.
I think Sam probably has a little data to add to that.
Oh, well, and as you probably have noticed, Sue, they put in the crossing across what I call old floor,
right.
When it comes down, and so that's where we think it could pick up, and in talking to Waterworks staff to go around that backside. So it's in our thoughts, and Randy's actually, part of what he's doing this past year is really leading our connectivity aspect. So there's a lot of conversations around how does that fit with what's going on with Grace Station, with the high, what do we call it, the high trail in the railroad beds that would run behind and out of the floodplain along that railroad bed that's not utilized anymore. So there's a lot of activities, not all directed by us, but obviously we're part of that conversation.
Yeah, we're definitely a part of that conversation, but as you know, with any trail, there's a lot of moving parts.
But just to be clear, I think for the context of some of the discussions we've been involved in, the placement of that bridge to the north, that is one that kind of tentatively looking as if it will go to Gray's Station and connect in to Gray's Lake. There's some concern about the placement of that bridge and its impact on connectivity and the location, particularly around Gray's Lake. So an FYI, that's why the issue of what's happening on our side of Fleur Drive, if you will, and north really has relevance to larger discussions about where the bridge will be and how that'll work.
And I know in the conversations that we've had with Carl Voss lately, who's leading a lot of that, coming in behind like Meredith, for instance, Meredith is, as I understand, has responded really positively to having that go along there, which would obviously complement where we would put that spur into the park as well. So.
Terrific. Thanks, Sam.
Well, and Mel was in on the meeting, and so I had said that this presentation was going on and that we'd try to find out if that's part of the connection, because we see that as a great way to take 1,100 housing units and to give them access to the park if a donor would come forward.
Yeah, I think we've only looked at it from a financial standpoint from the connectivity once it comes into the park, but I know in the conversations with Carl that they're looking at extending it over into that area. So.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, as we all know, the Hubble development was teetering back and forth whether that was going to take place or not, and there was a lot of conversations on both sides. And it's nice to see that it is going to be transforming that area, but we haven't quite thought through the process. Astor, I believe it's only been a month since they got to go ahead.
Do you have a guess how much money the trail would be?
There was somewhere around
about a little over $500,000 for the one inside the park.
Thank you. Excellent.
Any other questions?
Presentation.
All right,
Do
thank
you
you.
have any questions?
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.